Hi, I'm Justin Barrett. I'm president of Blueprint 1543. I am a psychological scientist and former university professor. And this is another video in my series on tech prudence, or curbing your tech enthusiasm. In this series, I'm discussing those kinds of technologies we should be particularly careful about because they run a high risk of spreading broadly and rooting themselves deeply in our lives, so that if they do turn out to be harmful to us or have unintended consequences, they're really kind of hard to get rid of. And I've suggested there are at least 4 questions we can ask of any new tech that helps us predict whether they stand a likelihood of spreading widely and rooting themselves deeply in us. 4 questions are: is it easy to use, because it sort of takes advantage of the way human minds naturally work? Are we motivated to use it because it starts fulfilling a need or helps us address a certain kind of basic human drive or need in our lives from our basic kind of human psychology? Third, is there a little tweak in it? Is there something that makes it attention grabbing? Again, maybe because it's playing off of the way that our minds usually pay attention to things, and it's like, ooh, I'm going to juice it up there and really make it attention demanding in some exciting kind of way. Or fourth, does it piggyback on a technology that has those other 3 features? So while it may not all by itself have those, it's piggybacking on other technologies that are already widespread and hence part of our cultural condition. And because of that piggybacking, it sort of inherits some of those features. So those are the 4 questions. They are rooted in an area of psychological science that you might call the cognitive science of culture. Why do certain kinds of cultural forms spread as successfully as they do across particular cultural groups? Or why are they so persistent and resilient even within a given cultural group? I take up some of these issues in many of my works on cognitive science of religion, but I also talk about some of the background ideas in my book, Thriving with Stone Age Minds. In this particular video, I want to talk about social media. As I mentioned in the previous one, and as I discuss at length in this book, humans are hypersocial animals. We live in large groups of people. We're very keenly interested in the motivations and behaviors of others. We want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're up to. We want to know if we can trust them, if we can get them to trust us, that we can collaborate to solve problems together. Can we trust the information they give us? Can I give them information that raises my status? There are all kinds of social, psychological, or social cognitive kinds of assets that we traffic in because we're such a social kind of animal and we're thinking animals. It's really important for us to be able to learn from each other, to acquire social information. As Joe Henrich and Robert Boyd and Pete Richardson and many other scientists have observed, part of the secret of human success, our ability that we've demonstrated that we can live in all kinds of different climates and lots of different kinds of ecological conditions without changing our basic genetics, is because we've managed to share information with each other. Information about how do you live in that place. But to transmit that information successfully, we need to pay attention to who's good to learn from. And we need the learning devices that attend to this social kind of learning, like imitation, and figuring out exactly who to imitate, the high prestigious, highly skilled individuals who are like us that everybody else is paying attention to. Those are called social learning biases, among other mechanisms that help us then pass on this social information. So we're deeply social animals. We have to communicate a lot. Why? In part of it is forming these nice relationships, but also part of it is sharing information. And that sharing information includes building new technologies themselves. So there's this interesting kind of psychosocial ecosystem of information. Enter social media. Social media, things like Facebook, but then later we've got Instagram and TikTok and lots of different kinds of digital platforms. These were introduced as a way, at least initially, for us to keep in touch with each other, to keep sharing that sort of social information with our friends, with our family members, with our network, our social network. That's great. It's actually playing off of earlier kinds of technologies like telephones of regular sorts, but also smartphones especially, that we could use to communicate at a distance, take advantage of web-based technologies and others that were already out there. But why social media? Why did it become such a phenomenon and spread so widely and deeply? Well, by my analysis with these 4 questions, it's really easy to see why. First of all, it's relatively easy to use this stuff. Again, it's building off of familiar kinds of technologies that were designed to be relatively easy for our kinds of social brains to take advantage of. But maybe even more important, we are deeply motivated by the kind of information that we're getting on social media. We want the gossip. We want to know what our people are doing, what they're saying, what they're thinking about things. We also want to know about people we don't even know that well, that the people we know might know better than we do, because that helps tell us something about the people that we might be interacting with. That's strategic information too. Who are the people that I care about? Who are they paying attention to? That's social information that our minds are naturally tuned toward. We want to know where the people we care about are looking for their information as well, whether we think about it or not. That's part of our intuitive psychology. So it's really easy to see how we are motivated to be in that space. And then what a lot of these platforms do very successfully is give us, in that third category, what you might think of as super stimuli. They take something ordinary and kind of amp it up and juice it. So they clean and streamline and sharpen social information and feedback. We get likes, we get thumbs up, we get little happy faces, we get negative feedback, and it's very clear if we're getting positive or negative types of rewards. And our social reward systems in our brain are feeling it each time. We get these drips of all those happy drugs that make us either feel connected or feel punished, socially punished and ostracized. It's very sharpened super stimuli for our social brain. And that's one of the reasons why it can be easy to get sucked into it, because we're getting really clear information, much clearer information often than we get face to face. Why? Because face to face, we're busy playing off of each other, monitoring each other's emotions and reactions. And usually, if we're decent people at all, we care what the other person is talking about. And so we might modify our message. We might hide our message a little bit, because of reputational risk, because we don't want to hurt feelings or whatever it is. And a lot of that falls out of play on our social media sites. And so it's not surprising that they kind of give us a really clear hits when it comes to social information. So it kind of really, it hits our motivational button. What's that second question about? Does it meet a really basic kind of psychological need? Yes, it does. Second, and it adds an interesting twist. This idea of super stimuli, or something really salient and easy for us to be attracted to. And for these reasons, then, it's very likely that social media could spread, especially because it's piggybacking on other media and other technological devices like our smartphones that we've already have spread broadly for reasons that I've discussed earlier. So for these reasons, then, it's really easy to see why something like social media would take off, why it's so widespread, why it's so deeply rooted into our lives, and why now that we've got all of this information starting to come out showing just how bad social media is for pretty much all of us, but especially our young people, especially kids. Teenagers and younger should not be part of this stuff. It's really not good for us in terms of our emotional well-being, in terms of our psychological development, heck, in terms of our social intelligence. Because we're dealing with such super stimuli, social super stimuli, we're losing the ability to be subtle, to read subtle cues, to have good face-to-face interactions. And that's not good. So these poor dears, I've had this interesting interaction recently with someone early in their early 20s who admitted to us old guys that she just doesn't have good social skills. And it's not because she has some particular kind of impairment other than she's lived too long with social media. So she doesn't know how to interact with people face to face. She's never developed that skill. Props to her for recognizing that. The evidence is becoming abundantly clear that social media is not good for us, especially for young people, because of the long-term developmental negative consequences, as well as the emotional and mental health problems that are associated with it. And yet, really hard to get people to leave it. Why? Well, it's pushing all the right buttons. And now we've also have this herding kind of thing. We're social animals. We tend to go with the rest of the herd, and the rest of the herd is still there. And so it's not uncommon to hear in surveys, when young people especially are asked, do you know social media is bad for you? They say yes. Well, why don't you leave it? Well, I will as soon as everybody else does. And so we're in this sort of tragic suicide pact when it comes to social media, in part because the technology has been developed to take advantage of the way that human minds naturally work. And that's a real problem for tech prudence. So that's my analysis. As always, like, subscribe, leave me your comments, suggestions for other kinds of, say, technology you'd like me to talk about, or other kinds of problems. What my channel is about is trying to take some of the wealth of the social sciences and the psychological sciences and other human sciences and the wisdom of the Christian faith and other philosophical traditions and put them together in an integrated way to address the topics that matter to us, matter to living a better life. Thanks for joining me again. And until next time, try to be tech prudent.